So let's go to the next scale. So we started off on a plot. We went to a field. Now we're going to look at what's the impact of cover crops on a watershed. 25 minutes. Okay, so we have time for some questions. All right, what's the impact on a watershed scale? And I'm doing this work with Dr. Catherine O'Reilly and a host of graduate students. I've learned how to delegate authority so that they can run the race. All right. So Lake Bloomington Watershed, right in our backyard. All of this work is done within maybe a 5-mile radius of each other. So it kind of clusters. You get an idea of what's happening on the plot, field, scale, and then our watershed to see if they correlate. Sorry again, I have things in acres instead of hectares, but basically the concept is there's a paired watershed study. This watershed consists of about 4 farmers, okay? It's 266 hectares, none cover crop, 0 cover crops. This watershed, this is about 600 or so acres, we think, drainage area. This watershed is about 1,100 acres. We cover crop 50% of it, area application. And we wanted to monitor the water at these 2 points. This is Money Creek. This is what? Lake Bloomington, all right? So we wanted to see how cover crops are affecting at 50% adoption, could affect water quality, could affect the location of soil nitrogen in the spring and the species, whether it's ammonium or whether it's nitrate. That's really important. Oh, so the control watershed had more corn than soybeans. I mean, had more corn compared to the treatment watershed, and then the treatment watershed had more soybeans. So you kind of can understand the dynamics there. And we didn't try to control any of this. We basically went in, we had farmers, we asked them to sign up. They signed up, we signed the contract, and all I said was, let me cover crop. Everything that they were doing, they kept doing. I didn't dictate how much nitrogen, I didn't dictate when it was applied, I didn't dictate whether they tilled. Once I apply the cover crops, I'm out of there, and all we do is monitor the water, okay? And so, here's just the area application, kind of letting you know we cover crop about 50%. These are the dates that 500 or so acres was actually planted, so we couldn't do it all in one day. We had to spread it out over several days. And it was amazing. All of the farmers decided, without my pushing, that they wanted radish oats before corn and cereal radish before soybeans. They decided that they were going to rotate the cover crop with the cash crop without me. So I'm thinking that they must have went to McDonald's and had some coffee and said, what are we going to do to this young fella? Let's figure this thing out. And amazingly, they're smart. They're smart. They're innovative. They knew from experience that I'm going to get nitrogen back fast from radish. I want my corn there to capture it. And then I'm going to have a slow release because of high seeding ratio from cereal. And so I want the soybeans to deal with that. Okay? This is just an area photo taken by Church area. That was the area applicator. You can see the cover crops there across the watershed. This is what it looks like up close in 2015. You can see here what's happening. Got a green application there, starting to adapt it. Okay, I don't know if that's DAP, a dry strip till, or if that's an injection of anhydrous. I'm not sure. All right. This is what it looks like in 2016 fall. This is also shot from his airplane. I was actually going to Arizona for a conference, and I was sitting on the aisle seat, and I looked out. I was looking for this, and I saw it, and I was reaching. I was like, "Excuse me," trying to take a picture with my cell phone try to capture this also. You can see the footprint of the cover crops from the aircraft. It was amazing to see, with everything else being brown, So this picture, is this a problem? What kind of problem is this? Could have green in the combine. What's that going to affect? How fast you can go. Okay. What else? What's happening, you think? Crop moisture could affect the crop moisture. So This is radish oats. You can't see it, but that's radish oats. We had a warm fall. Perfect growing condition for oats. When oats grow, do they grow like this or like this? They grow like that. Where do we cut the soybeans? At the ground. So we got a mixture of residue from the soybean, and we got a haircut for the oats, and it's coming out the back end. This combine did a very good job. The farmer texted me this picture and said, we got a problem. So I'm sitting in Indiana, I'm like, okay, I need to get my guys on the ground to go check them out. So I sent my guys out, and I told them, I texted them back and said, someone's coming there to talk to you to try to figure out the problem. If you have a problem at the elevator, let me know and I'll compensate you. Because I'm sensitive to this is the way this man feeds his family. Okay? He went to the elevator, followed all the way through, and then he texted me back, we have no problem. and I really admire the growth. At first it was like, we have a problem. Now he's talking about he admires the growth. Okay? But what happened was oats grew faster than we thought it would. We flew it on thinking that it was just going to come up slowly like normal. It took off. And you can see here the line, it's halfway to soybean. Okay? But we didn't have an effect. Didn't affect moisture. It didn't affect anything at the elevator. So I thought this was a pretty neat picture. This is what can happen, but you have to work it out. You can't cringe up and talk about it for 10 years. Figure out what the problem is and work it out. So across that watershed, we decided to take biomass. We wanted to see what was in the biomass that we were growing. Okay, and so where you see this red, this is the cereal radish, and where you see the yellow, that's the radish oats. Okay, and you can see the stamp here, right? Cereal. You can see the stamp. So kilograms per hectare, 1,700 kilograms per hectare for cereal radish versus radish oats, only 460. This is the rock star here, though. Almost 1,300 kilograms per hectare difference when you look at the growth in the fall versus the growth that occurred over time when we got to the spring. That's cereal effect. See that? That's the benefit of having something that overwinters. So you get the fall scavenging and growth, and then you get coverage over the winter, you get coverage in the spring, and then you also get more growth. Now, that's going to convert to more uptake. Nitrate uptake, kilograms per hectare, 58 versus 21 for radish oats. 42 kilograms per hectare difference when you look at, you subtract out fall and spring uptake. This is the change. So we'd have stopped if we'd have stopped in the fall, we wouldn't have seen this. If we would have terminated the cereal in the fall, we wouldn't have seen this. Then you can see here how that stamps out where you have the cereal. We did have another problem. See that's a red, that's a 0. This 4, that's really low. Anybody want to guess what happened there? First of all, we're not on a plot scale, so I can't control everything. Chemical, herbicide interaction, terminated the cover crop from residual. He was trying to get rid of water hemp, put on 2 or 3 times more chemical than normal, and he got rid of the cover crop. Can I control that? No. Can you control that? Yeah. Talk to me, right? Or talk to these guys and say, hey, I'm putting this down. Is that gonna cross radish or cereal? There's all sorts of information out there. Purdue, Michigan State, where they have these grids. They have on the up and down vertical, the chemical. Across the top, they have the cover crop. And you can just, square them up to see which one has an effect, which one will cancel out the growth. You gotta get that if you wanna be effective. This is about 20 acres. This is about maybe 65 or so acres. That's a dent, okay? But I'm learning because I'm doing this not in a controlled setting. I'm actually doing this in a watershed, multiple farmers. So we also took soil samples on grids across each watershed to understand the impact of cover crops on the nitrate and ammonium concentration. This is what we saw. Remember, this is cereal rye effect, okay? So in the first foot, basically, when you had radish oats, you had more nitrate there in the first foot compared to ammonium. That's because this winter kills. And then what? It began to decompose. There's research out of Nebraska showing where they did a litter bag study in the winter. God bless them, okay? So they were out there in Nebraska in December, January, February, and they were tracking decomposition over the winter. It was actually decomposing. We think that nothing happens. Something is happening. And so when it comes to March, that decomposition speeds up, you get this mineralization, and you get nitrate instead of ammonium. Now, why is this not so good? Why do we want ammonium here instead of nitrate? Say it again? It holds. Why? Because the soil is negatively charged and ammonium is positively charged, opposite attract. But if I have more nitrate here, then I have what? Negative, they're going to do what? They're going to repel. So that's how you get the leaching. That's how you could get the leaching. Now, if we were coming back with corn right in there early, we're good. But we're coming back with a late soybean, we could have some trouble, okay? So when you look at cereal radish across, across the watershed, you have about an equal portion of ammonium versus nitrate. You look at the non-cover crop within the cover crop watershed, and then this is the control watershed averaged out. You see it looks kind of more like the radish, but the radish had some decomposition from what it scavenged to make it greater. Okay? Same trend in the second foot, where you had radish oats. So now, at the second foot, now the tile is at 3 feet. And at your second foot, this is how much nitrate you have versus ammonium. Okay? That's pretty significant. Okay? Where you have radish oats, rye radish, you have basically an equal portion, because a lot of that nitrogen is still in this biomass. We took this soil sample close to about a week or two from termination of the cereal rye. Then where you have no cover crop growing, whether it's within the cover crop watershed or in the control watershed, it still looks kind of more like the radish oats. You have a lot of nitrate there, the second foot. So what's the impact on water? To separate this out, so this is all of the data that we've collected from that yellow point that was in the stream, okay, of each watershed. So we separated it out. This should be 15, 16 cover crop, and then 16 soybeans and corn. You know, I didn't control that, whatever they planted, and then then you have another cover crop growing season, or at least a half of one. So let's see what's happening. So basically, in 2015 fall, you start seeing an effect on the concentration of cover crops. So the blue dots are cover crop tile water, the impact of cover crops. The orange is the control. And then towards when things start warming up, things froze off, everything dropped, right? Then it warmed up, and then it warmed up to a point where the cover crops didn't really have an effect, because there was so much more nitrogen being released, as we've seen from the soil organic matter that's getting into the tile. It basically buffered the cover crop effect, okay? Because we only cover crop 50% of the watershed. So 50% of the land area was still contributing. They didn't have cover crops, was contributing to this point of discharge. When you look at the growing season, okay, cash crop growing season, whether corn or soybean, you're not seeing much separation, not much difference, okay? Then you come into this fall, and what I'm seeing here is we got kind of like a slight increase in nitrate getting into the stream from the non-cover crop watershed, the control, and then a decrease over time as the cover crop matures. Okay, so we're hoping that when we continue to analyze, that we see this gap widen, okay, and we see better control in the spring. So what is this saying, these last three slides? It's saying the same thing that we saw on a field scale. When the cover crops are growing, they have an impact. When they are not growing, that impact is buffered by other factors that the cover crop residue can't do anything about because it's dead. So then we need practices to couple with cover crops infield practices with nitrogen management that we can couple that effect and have an effect throughout the entire 360, 365, right? So this is the summary. We basically talked about this. You're getting about 19 to 52 pounds per acre of uptake. On the field scale, we said what, 50. So what we saw on a field is kind of converting to what we see on a watershed. Depending on what type of cover crop you have, you might have more nitrate in the soil first 2 feet if you have an inclusion rate of radish, and then you have more ammonium when you have an inclusion rate of cereal rye. That's a CNA ratio impact, and we need additional practices outside of the cover crop growing season to affect water quality, to have a sustained effect on water quality. Now, here's the fun. So we've been talking about conservation of nitrogen. What about the release? And when is it releasing? My graduate students are doing work on this. So this is our field at Purdue. And see what those flags are? We have litter bags buried to simulate spring tillage. Then we have some bags on top of the soil to simulate no-till. And we wanted to see what's the impact of tillage on the release of nitrogen to the soil solution, from the cover crop residue. This has been sprayed. It don't look like it, but you can see the bottom is starting to die. Right? It's been sprayed. This is cereal rye, been sprayed with glyphosate, and this is 3 weeks before planting. How much nitrogen, what percentage of nitrogen you think is going to come back from this field? 0 to 10% from that cereal rye by a show of hands. 10 to 40%. Okay. 40 to 60%. All right. 60 to 100%. Okay. What did you say, Doug?
I say high.
You say high? Okay. Right. So what do you think the CNN ratio here is? It's about not higher than my knee. Oh no, too high.
30?
Too high.
About 10, 11.
15 to 17 to 1. What's the CNN ratio of this cereal rye, you think? CNN, carbon to nitrogen ratio. I'm sorry, carbon to nitrogen ratio. About 15 to 1. So this is our methodology. We harvest, prepare litter bags, and then as I told you, we put it on the surface or we bury it within the plow depth. This is the data. Most importantly, this is the release. So percent in release from the residue, and these are the growth stages. This is the 50% line. The dotted lines are no-till. The solid lines are till. So we have treatments of hairy vetch, and we have cereal rye, till and no-till for each one. And this is what we're getting. So by, let's say, V6, you're getting over 50% of the nitrogen return from the cereal rye and hairy vetch. By VT, you're getting a range of 75 to almost 100% return. Okay, if you look just at the cereal rye, 75 to maybe 90% return. That's pretty significant.
What kind of tillage is used?
Basically, spring till, disc, finish.
A disc followed by finisher.
Followed by finisher. Because we still had some root balls there. Best thing you can do is just strip till in the fall. You don't have to worry about any of that. We did some sampling of the roots. That's very difficult and tedious to do. I can't get my students to hang in there. But we did learn that the CNN ratio of the roots are higher than the above ground. So the decomposition of the roots would be slower than what you see here. So this is where we're going. We're trying to understand and let farmers know if you plant this particular cover crop, you can expect, if you get this much biomass, you should expect this much uptake of nitrogen, and you should expect it to be released by X growing season. That's where we're going. Imagine a model that can help you visualize that.
I'm trying to understand what you mean by release. Does it release it to the air or to the soil?
So we're making an assumption that once we sample, so we put, let's say 70, 80 litter bags out across the whole field. Every 2 weeks we go grab one and we weigh it and we determine the nitrogen content and compare it to the original nitrogen content when we terminate it. And as that decrease, we're assuming that that nitrogen is mineralizing because carbon is also mineralizing. So it's going back either to the soil solution or it's going into the soil solution, and if you get a big rain, it denitrifies. If you get a big rain, it may leach. But we're saying simply at what time and what quantity of nitrogen is releasing from the residue of cereal and hairy vetch over time. That's what we're measuring, simply. Now we have another study that's where we're going to label the nitrogen molecule and actually track it through application, soil, cover crop uptake, decomposition, crop uptake, yield. We're going to track it all the way to the grain to determine the fate of nitrogen when cover crops are in the environment. Well, we haven't gotten there yet. We haven't started yet.
Can I ask an extremely simplistic question?
Yes.
If cereal rye is capturing about 50 pounds of N, of that 50 pounds of N, how much of it ends up back in the soil and how much ends into the atmosphere?
Good question. So we're going to answer that this next 3 years. We just got more funding. That's how you do that. That's how you do it.
I want it now.
So we just got another round of funding from farmers, from Nitrate on the plot site. And so we are now able to measure soil, plant, water, and the atmosphere. Okay. And we're tracking nitrogen through at least 3 of them, soil, plant, water. Haven't figured out how to track it through the air. So we'll be able to answer that question and have pie charts to tell you cover crop took up this much nitrogen that was applied. You know, one thing is the cover crop really interacting with, what pool is it interacting with? Is it the soil organic matter nitrogen feeding the cover crop? Is it the fall nitrogen or the spring nitrogen feeding the cover crop? Is it residual? We don't know yet. So we're going to learn that, and then what percentage of it is going to return and be taken up by the crop and then convert to yield. So if I know how much of it is converting to yield, then I can use the yield numeric economic number to back out value back to the cover crop. Sure. Then I can tell farmers your cost recovery for this type of cover crop on average over 10 years is X.
I'm going to have a little fun with you.
Okay.
Everybody was asking on TV, they were asking for predictions of who was going to win the Super Bowl. Would you like to predict what number is going to come out after the next 3 years? Would it be 50%?
So I'm going to predict, first of all, that a large percentage of the nitrogen that the cover crop is interacting with is not fertilizer, number one.
It's organic.
It's either organic or it could be organic and residual fertilizer. Okay, those two pools. I don't think so much, at least for radish, not so much of that nitrogen is coming from, let's say, fall applied nitrogen. For cereal rye, that's a whole different story. Then I'm going to predict that about 15 to 17% of the nitrogen that's in the cover crop is being used by the cash crop, let's say corn alone. Because I know that corn takes up right now maybe 40 to 55 or 60% of what's applied in the spring or the fall. So I'm not looking for the cover crop nitrogen to dominate that percentage, but to be a smaller portion of that percentage. Okay. And then I don't know what's going to happen to grain, because some of it could stay in the stock, in the residue. I don't know. I'm not sure on how that's going to petition. And I want to say this is 1 year. We're going to do this 2 more years to see, and we're going to create a model from that to help you guys understand.
It's going to be more than 2 more years, Shalamar. We'll keep you.
Yeah. So thank you. You were a great audience. I appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.